He used to have it all, a perfect family, a happy home. But then, everything was ripped away. A massive fire, set by someone with pure evil in their heart, took his parents from him, leaving him orphaned in the blink of an eye. With nowhere else to go, he ended up wandering to a local orphanage. But when the police started asking questions, this kid, Seok, clammed up. He refused to give his family name or address. He knew deep down, hiding his identity was the only way he was going to survive. And more importantly, it was the only way he'd ever be able to avenge his parents' deaths. Seok's silence infuriated the orphanage director. "Fine," the director barked. "Then you'll be Moo Myung." That's literally, no name, in Korean. Hearing the director's harsh words, Moo Myung just felt defeated. He closed his eyes and accepted the name. Just like Gil-do had become Young Tae, Choi Seok was gone, replaced by Moo Myung. A new identity, a fresh start, forged in the fires of unimaginable loss. Fast forward 10 years. Moo Myung is now a young man, and he's found something resembling a family again. 3 incredibly close friends. Tae-ha dreams of becoming a cop, a protector of justice. Gil-yong. Well, let's just say Gil-yong's always trying to pull some kind of scam. One day, Gil-yong picked the wrong mark, trying to con some local toughs. He ended up getting the living daylights beaten out of him. Luckily, Moo Myung and Tae-ha arrived, just in the nick of time. Without hesitation, they jumped into the fray to save their friend. It was over in minutes. A flurry of punches and kicks. Moo Myung and Tae-ha made short work of those thugs. The boss, terrified, actually started hurting himself to try to get out of it. And then there's Yo Kyung. She's the girl all 3 of them are head over heels for. The one who takes care of them, manages their money. Probably a good thing, considering Gil-yong, and generally keeps them grounded. With his friends around, life at the orphanage actually felt almost normal. But one day, that happiness is shattered. A familiar figure shows up in the orphanage kitchen, a figure who sends a cold shiver down Moo Myung's spine. It was just a flash. Jung Tae lighting a stove and turning around. But suddenly, Moo Myung was thrown back to that terrible night, to the flames consuming his home. The horrific memory of his parents being murdered. A wave of fear crashed over him, leaving him gasping for air. The roaring flames, the sight of his dying parents, and, most of all, the eyes of the killer. Those cruel, cold eyes, that monstrous face. Moo Myung would never, ever forget them. And he's convinced that the man standing in front of him is the one who destroyed his family. What Jung Tae doesn't know is that the young man before him is the very same kid who escaped his trap all those years ago. Jung Tae casually hands Moo Myung a knife, suggesting he help with the vegetables. Moo Myung shakily takes the knife. He grips the handle tightly, his eyes hardening. The images fled back, his parents, their laughter, their love. The joy that was stolen from him. A rage builds inside him, a burning desire to plunge the knife into the heart of the man who took everything away. But just then, Yeo Kyung walks into the kitchen, asking about breakfast. The interruption snaps Moo Myung out of it, pulls him back from the edge. Meanwhile, it turns out Gil-do's visit to the orphanage wasn't just some act of charity for good publicity. He is there to help, but also he's searching for someone. Choi Seok, the boy who vanished 10 years earlier. He figured that since only 2 adult bodies were found in the fire, Choi Seok must still be alive. So, for the last decade, he's been going to orphanages, playing the philanthropist, desperately searching for any sign of the missing boy. Later, Moo Myung brings a tray of tea to the headmaster's office. He freezes when he sees a picture of himself as a little boy on the desk. And Gil-do is getting closer, closing in on the photo, about to uncover his identity. Thinking fast, Moo Myung clumsily drops the tray, the teacups shattering on the floor. It's enough to distract Gil-do to avert the immediate threat. After leaving the headmaster's office, Gil-do tells the director that Choi Seok and Moo Myung are the same age, and the director might notice some burn scars on his body. The hunt is on. After that, Gil-do leaves some money with the orphanage director to help with the investigation. Then, he's gone. The very next day, Moo Myung is hitting the archives. He's diving deep into everything Gil-do's been up to for the past decade. And what he finds, it's staggering. This guy took a hole-in-the-wall restaurant and built it into a major business empire. He became the king of his little town. But as name Kwan, that's the name of the town, expanded, so did Gil-do's ambitions. He wanted to move the whole operation from the mountains to the heart of the city, chasing even bigger opportunities. The problem is, the old man. We're assuming this is some kind of mentor or elder figure shut him down. Gil-do basically told him to shove it. The old man was furious, and things fell apart. The old man ordered an investigation into Gil-do's past, and what he found was explosive. Over a decade ago, Gil-do was involved in robbery and even murder. Determined to take Gil-do down, the old man hires a private investigator to dig up the dirt. But, wouldn't you know it, as soon as the P.I. leaves the old man's office, Gil-do's goons spot him. Gil-do finds out about the old man's plans and forces the investigator to call the old man and lure him outside. Then he sets up a traffic accident, a hit and run. But Gil-do's plan doesn't go exactly as he hoped. The old man survives, but he's left crippled. Now, Gil-do's main business is running a noodle shop, but how could he ever truly appreciate the taste of those noodles? Because the secret recipe, it originally belonged to Moon-young's dad. It wasn't just his parents Gil-do hurt. He stole his father's legacy. The chance to taste his father's cooking again hits Moon-young hard. His heart overflows with emotion. Images of his father's kind face from his childhood flash through his mind. Reliving the flavors of his father's noodles in the enemy's restaurant makes Moon-young realize exactly why his father was targeted. He sits at the table, lost in thought. The seed of revenge begins to sprout, growing stronger and stronger. All this investigating has Moon-young out all night, and the orphanage director is furious. He starts yelling, hitting Moon-young. But Moon-young snaps. For a moment, he wants to hurt the director. Fortunately, Tae-ha jumps in and stops him. But in that split second, as Tae-ha restrains Moon-young, the director accidentally sees a burn scar on Moon-young's arm. The director remembers what Gil-do said about Choi Seok having burn scars. Moon-young realizes he's just given himself away. He pulls his arm back, trying to hide the scar. The director starts digging. He looks through Moon-young's medical records from when he first arrived at the orphanage. Not only does he confirm the burn scar, but he also sees the date of Moon-young's admission. He immediately calls Gil-do. The director now knows that the day Choi Seok disappeared and the day Moon-young arrived at the orphanage are a perfect match. But the director doesn't reveal his suspicions to Moon-young right away, because he isn't 100% sure yet. He decides to test him, to subtly probe. He asks Moon-young, "Choi Seok? Are you Choi Seok?" The question catches Moon-young completely off guard. "Choi Seok? Who's that?" he replies. Even though Moon-young lies, the director is now even more convinced. Then, the director realizes only Gil-do would know the name Choi Seok, and that the only way to definitively identify Moon-young is with his childhood photo. He races to his office to get it, but discovers the director just stepped inside. Defeated, he retreats and starts looking for another way. The next day, while the director is out, Moon-young sneaks into the office, planning to steal the photo. But Yeok-young is already there, cleaning. Luckily, she's on Moon-young's side. He manages to get the photo without her noticing. However, the fact that the photo is now missing only confirms the director's suspicions. He immediately calls Gil-do. Meanwhile, while Tae-ha is pushing himself to the limit in a long-distance race, trying to finally get into the police academy, Moon-young accidentally overhears Gil-young mentioning the sports festival videotape. It hits Moon-young like a ton of bricks. The tape is still around, the one that can expose him. When he learns that the orphanage director has gone to Masan, Moon-young panics. He races back to the orphanage to pack his things. Getting away is the only way he can survive. And if he can survive, he can take down Gil-do. But as he's packing, he stumbles upon the videotape. Except, it's not what he expects. The tape the director gave Gil-do is a pornographic film. The director is dumbfounded, utterly humiliated. Gil-do, furious, has him thrown out of Masan. Turns out, Yeok-young had switched the tapes. The day Gil-do came to the orphanage, pretending to be charitable, Yeok-young overheard his conversation with the director. She realized they were talking about Moon-young's past. So, the day Moon-young took the photo, she also swapped the real tape for a fake one. Yeok-young has completely destroyed the evidence against Moon-young. But now, danger is closing in on her. Having been kicked out by Gil-do, the director is enraged and drinks himself into a stupor all night. Drunk and unhinged, he develops a twisted plan to assault Yeok-young. But just as he's about to succeed, tragedy strikes. Moon-young, Tae-ha, and Gil-young break into the room, only to find the director lying in a pool of blood. Yeok-young is huddled in the corner, terrified, staring at her blood-stained hands in utter shock. Running an orphanage isn't always a saintly endeavor, and can even be an absolute hell. This devil had tried to take advantage of a child he'd raised for a decade, but fate had other plans. Strangely, Yeok-young isn't immediately arrested for the crime. Instead, she's shocked to discover she's gone from being the presumed killer to the key witness. Overhearing a conversation between the police and the doctor, Yeok-young wants to confess. But Gil-young stops her and pulls her back to her hospital bed. The truth is, the night before, when Moon-young and the others realized Yeok-young had accidentally killed the director, they immediately brought her back to the house and tried to comfort her. Then, Moon-young went back to the crime scene. intending to find the weapon and take the blame for Yo Kyung. But when he got there, the weapon was gone without a trace. Tae-ha had gotten there first. Moon-young chases after Tae-ha, trying to get the weapon back, but Tae-ha refuses to hand it over. Moon-young knows that Tae-ha's lifelong dream is to become a police officer. If Tae-ha has a criminal record, that dream will be shattered forever. But Tae-ha is willing to sacrifice everything. With no other choice, the two friends have to fight it out, struggling over the weapon that killed the director. But Moon-young is no match for Tae-ha. He's eventually beaten to the ground, unable to fight back. And then, Tae-ha walks into the police station with the weapon, giving up his lifelong dream, confessing to being the killer. Soon after, the orphanage is shut down because of the murder. Moon-young finds all the records related to him in the orphanage and burns them. Fast forward 3 months. Because it was deemed a manslaughter case involving a minor and a voluntary confession, Tae-ha is sentenced to 3 years in prison. Yo Kyung, filled with regret, visits Tae-ha, giving him a photo of the 4 of them as children. Watching Tae-ha being led into that cold, unforgiving prison, Yo Kyung sits on a bench, completely devastated, drowning in self-reproach. Leaving the prison, Yo Kyung brings Tae-ha up to speed on everything that's going on. As they say, all good things must come to an end. Because of the orphanage being shut down, they've lost their home, their shared space. So, the 3 of them agreed to meet Tae-ha when he gets out in 3 years. And then, they'll all go their separate ways, trying to figure out their lives. But what Moon-young doesn't know is that even though he destroyed all the evidence of his past, Gil-do hasn't given up on finding him. Gil-do's right-hand man starts to wonder about it. Why would someone so powerful be so obsessed with tracking down one orphan? To give his subordinate more to go on. To help him finally find Moon-young, Gil-do reveals the truth about what happened 10 years ago. Armed with this information, the subordinate tries to use Moon-young's deceased parents to find his weak spot. And it works. No longer tied to the orphanage, Moon-young immediately goes to claim his parents' ashes. The old man at the storage facility leads Moon-young to a warehouse filled with small boxes. Each one contains the ashes of someone who had no one else. Among thousands of boxes, Moon-young finds his parents. He's overwhelmed with sadness as he holds their ashes. But then, the old man sees the name on the box and rushes outside in a panic. What happens next terrifies Moon-young. The old man locks him in the warehouse and immediately calls Gil-do's subordinate. The truth is, Gil-do's subordinate had pretended to be a police officer and visited the old man early that morning. He accused anyone who came to claim the ashes of the Choi as being a criminal. So, the man comes back with a group of thugs. Moon-young hears the commotion outside the door. He realizes his cover's blown. He smashes all the lights in the warehouse, slipping into the darkness, waiting for his chance. After searching all night, Gil-do's subordinate can't find Moon-young. Terrified of being punished for his failure, he lies, claiming Moon-young is back with his ancestors. Then, he finds a body with burn marks and presents it to Gil-do for confirmation. After examining the body, Gil-do finally breathes a sigh of relief. He believes it's over. But what Gil-do doesn't realize is that this incident has only made Moon-young more determined than ever to get revenge. He stands on the edge of the cliff and scatters his parents' ashes into the wind. From this moment on, he won't hide anymore. He'll go deep into enemy territory to execute his grand plan. This noodle shop isn't just about making money. It's about revenge. Having studied in Masan for a while, Moon-young makes an incredible fish noodle soup. Simple ingredients, a simple recipe, but the result is a bowl of noodles that's delicious in both taste and appearance. The reason he chose this location for his fish noodle shop is to get close to one woman. Her name is Mi-ja, and she has a special fondness for fish noodles. She's one of the biggest shareholders in Gil-do's Namkwon Park. She's also a nationally renowned food critic. Even though Gil-do outwardly respects Mi-ja, he secretly wants to keep all the power for himself. They are constantly competing and clashing. Their relationship isn't as friendly as it appears. Mi-ja's opinion is becoming a real worry for Gil-do. He's planning a small party at Namkwon Park to boost his own prestige, and Mi-ja's opinion could make or break him. To push Mi-ja out of the picture, Gil-do hires a ghostwriter to trash Mi-ja and intentionally slanders Mi-ja's character on TV, while pretending to be a generous philanthropist. While Mi-ja watches the show with growing anger, Moon-young sees his chance for revenge. He wants to use Mi-ja's power to infiltrate Namkwon Park and carry out his plan. One day, Mi-ja comes to Moon-young's noodle shop to eat, and Moon-young makes her a special bowl of mountain chicken noodles, the kind they serve at Namkwon. Just by the smell, Mi-ja recognizes that distinct aroma. She takes a bite, and her face is filled with disbelief. The taste, the texture, everything is exactly the same as the noodles at Namkwon. Mi-ja wipes her mouth with a napkin and smiles, but she's clearly puzzled. Nam-kwan deliberately scattered their noodle-making process to hide their secrets. Each department doesn't interfere with each other's, never revealing the full recipe. So, how could the man standing before her recreate the same dish? Facing Mi-ja's suspicion, Moon-young confidently says, "In this world, if I try something once, I can make the same flavor." And this show of skill gives Mi-ja an idea of how to deal with Gil-do. She tries to use a spot at Nam-kwan as bait to lure Moon-young into becoming her pawn. But Moon-young isn't easily fooled. He knows Mi-ja is in a tough spot right now. She shouldn't be ordering him around, she needs to be begging him. Moon-young's words make Mi-ja jump up, ready to leave. He tells Mi-ja that to maintain her position, she has to cooperate with him. But to cooperate, Moon-young has a condition. Mi-ja has to reveal her intelligence network inside Nam-kwan. Hearing that Moon-young has been investigating her for 3 years, Mi-ja just smirks and sits back down. She realizes that Moon-young opening a noodle shop near her home was all about getting close to her. So his goal isn't just to join Nam-kwan. She asks Moon-young what he really wants, but Moon-young doesn't answer the question directly. At a food critic event, Mi-ja confidently presents a bowl of noodles to everyone. But to her shock, the first bowl of noodles is terrible. Gil-do speaks up, pointing out numerous problems with the dish. Mi-ja thinks Gil-do is just being spiteful, because he can't handle the truth. But then she tastes the soup herself, and her mind goes blank. She can't believe how different these noodles are from the ones Moon-young made for her. After everyone judges Moon-young's noodles, they all shake their heads in disapproval. What is going on? Why would Moon-young deliberately do this? This is a disaster. Mi-ja wanted to use the power of the media to humiliate her opponent with a bowl of noodles. But now the noodles she confidently presented are inedible. Not only is the live broadcast cut off, but she's publicly humiliated by her partner. Seeing Gil-do's smug expression, Mi-ja is filled with resentment but doesn't know what to say. After everyone leaves, Mi-ja angrily seeks out Moon-young and demands to know why he deliberately made her lose face. But Moon-young responds calmly, "The person you put in Nam-kwan isn't who you think they are." Hearing Moon-young's words, Mi-ja is completely shocked. She realizes she's underestimated Moon-young's abilities. Moon-young tells Mi-ja that this was just a warning. If she still wants to cooperate, she needs to reveal her intelligence network within Nam-kwan. Moon-young's skill completely overwhelms Mi-ja, forcing her to reveal her secrets. After the two officially reach a cooperation agreement, Moon-young bluntly says that he will start with a small party in Nam-kwan. Hearing Moon-young's words, Mi-ja can't help but be surprised again. Besides a few high-ranking officials, no one knows about this party. How does Moon-young know? After a moment of doubt, Mi-ja suddenly understands. She guesses that Moon-young also has an intelligence network within Nam-kwan. After making arrangements with Mi-ja, Moon-young begins his next plan. He wants to sabotage the party at Nam-kwan, and the key player in his plan is a high-ranking official. The reason Moon-young targets this particular official is that he has a history of conflict with Gil-do. Gil-do never wanted to be just a businessman. He wanted to get into politics, to hold a higher office. But even after Gil-do lavished him with favors, the official not only didn't do his job, but demanded even more money. Enraged, Gil-do beat the official up. What's worse, Gil-do secretly took compromising photos of the official and used them to blackmail him into obedience. Moon-young wants to use this situation, seizing the opportunity to persuade the official to cooperate with him. However, the only way to reach an agreement is to put the official in a difficult position. To get those compromising photos back, the official has no choice but to agree to cooperate with Moon-young. Little does Moon-young know, this decision nearly cost him his life. A few days later, Moon-young gets the guest list for the party from his informant and gives it to official Choi, hoping to prevent the party from happening smoothly by leveraging these connections. Then, official Choi reaches out to his superior, Representative So. This representative, So, is no ordinary politician. He has immense influence. Official Choi doesn't hesitate to get on his knees to show his loyalty, and he finally manages to convince Representative So to help him out. On the day of the party, Mi-ja is on her way to Nam-kwan when she gets a phone call. She learns that someone has threatened the invited guests, warning them not to attend the party. Who could it be? Someone with power they can't refuse to obey. As a result, all the celebrities on the guest list are forced to back out. Predictably, Gil-do's carefully planned party is a disaster. Besides a few high-ranking officials, no one shows up. Gil-do has to put on a brave face and start his speech in front of the 3 senior representatives. But the absence of the guests embarrasses the representatives. After a heated argument, they leave in anger. Later, Gil-do learns that the guest list was leaked, and that official Choi, one of his own men, was working with Moon-young behind his back. Gil-do invites official Choi to Nam-kwan and promises that if he reveals who leaked the list, he'll return the compromising photos. Official Choi's only goal is to get the photos back. He doesn't care if Moon-young lives or dies. So official Choi calls Moon-young in front of Gil-do, claiming he has something important to discuss. Coincidentally, today is the day Tae-ha is released from prison. But Moon-young can't miss this important meeting. So he calls Yeo-kyung to explain the situation. But Yeo-kyung is taking the prosecutor's exam. Her phone is turned off. Yeo-kyung knows it's Tae-ha's release day. So after the exam, she wants to go straight to the prison. But the exam supervisor stops her, saying the chief prosecutor wants to see her. Despite calling Yeo-kyung several times without an answer, Moon-young has to rush to the park. Meanwhile, Gil-young, after being involved in a car accident and hitting someone, is stuck in the hospital and can't go to prison. Tae-ha can't wait any longer. He's desperate to see his friends after all these years. But when he imagines seeing his 3 friends arriving to greet him with joy, it turns out to be just a fantasy. His 3 friends gradually disappear before his eyes, and Tae-ha's hopeful heart suddenly shatters. He never imagined that on such an important day, the only person who would come to pick him up would be a shady friend of his father's from long ago. Meanwhile, Moon-young rushes to the park, but official Choi uses the opportunity to escape. Moon-young, caught off guard, is stabbed in the back, literally. After taking down Moon-young, the man lifts his arm. Seeing the burn scar, he confirms his suspicions. The man before him is Choi Seok, the person his boss has been searching for. The man cuts off Moon-young's blood supply and, confirming that his pulse is weak, quickly leaves the scene. Meanwhile, after leaving the exam room, Yeo-kyung immediately gets into a taxi to go to the prison to pick up Tae-ha. However, when she turns on her cell phone, she sees dozens of missed calls. So she calls Moon-young. Moon-young, though barely conscious, struggles to answer the phone. When Yeo-kyung realizes Moon-young is in critical condition, she immediately tells the taxi driver to turn around. When Yeo-kyung arrives at the location, worried sick, Moon-young has already been taken away in an ambulance. Watching the ambulance disappear into the distance, Yeo-kyung is heartbroken. Fast forward 3 years. Yeo-kyung has become a prosecutor. The reason she worked so hard to achieve this title is because of Tae-ha's request 3 years ago to investigate the case of Tae-ha's father from many years ago. However, after reading the case files, she's overwhelmed. The victims of her parents' murder were murdered by a man who was manipulated by Tae-ha's dad. The reason it happened was that Tae-ha's father used to be a drug dealer. To get a supply of drugs, he was manipulated by others into brutally harming Yeo-kyung's parents. In turn, Tae-ha's father made both him and Yeo-kyung orphans. This leaves Tae-ha with an unpayable debt. From the very first day Tae-ha arrived at the orphanage, he recognized Yeo-kyung. From that moment on, he was determined to protect her with his life. That's also why Tae-ha initially insisted on taking the blame for Yeo-kyung. Learning the truth, Yeo-kyung doesn't blame Tae-ha. On the contrary, it strengthens her resolve to investigate the case. On the other side, after 3 years of operation, Gil-do's Royal Park is thriving. Meanwhile, his trusted associate, Hwang, because of the incident at the banquet 3 years ago, not only broke his leg, but was also demoted to a delivery worker. So he tasked Da-gu with finding a replacement. The man suddenly thinks of Tae-ha. When the man mentions Tae-ha's father, Gil-do is caught off guard. It turns out Gil-do also knew Tae-ha's father. After Tae-ha's release from prison, he worked at a factory. But because of his criminal record, he was not only unfairly fired but also had 3 months' salary withheld. In an instant, Tae-ha became an unemployed vagrant on the streets. And just when he's fed up with it all, Gil-do comes knocking, trying to recruit Tae-ha to become his henchman. But Tae-ha recognizes the man immediately. He witnessed Gil-do beating people up brutally. He doesn't want to be friends with scum like that and flatly refuses Gil-do. But Gil-do is drawn to Tae-ha's arrogance and secretly resolves to make Tae-ha do as he says. The next day, Gil-do forces the factory owner to go to Tae-ha's house. As soon as the factory owner steps inside, he kneels before Tae-ha and immediately returns the withheld wages. Seeing Gil-do enter the room, Tae-ha immediately understands his intention. Faced with a second rejection from Tae-ha, Gil-do reveals that he knows who manipulated Tae-ha's father into committing the crime. He leaves a business card, implying that Tae-ha needs to come to Royal Park for answers. What Gil-do doesn't know is that Moon-young didn't die. He was saved by Mi-ja. And this meeting between the two officially marks the beginning of their plan to destroy Gil-do. Under Mi-ja's introduction, Moon-young meets Gil-do for the first time. Gil-do, of course, won't hire just anyone Mi-ja recommends. So he starts an incredibly difficult challenge. Moon-young has to work as the kitchen manager for a day and present a review that satisfies all the shareholders. Only then can he successfully get the chef position. After Moon-young organizes the work efficiently, he begins to taste each dish about to be served and points out the flaws in each one. Only after tasting and confirming that there are no problems does Moon-young allow the servers to bring the food to the tables. After improving the dishes according to Moon-young's instructions, the customers in the restaurant are all mesmerized by the food. Everyone nods in praise. Finally, Moon-young submits a perfect exam and receives the agreement of everyone present. However, to survive in Royal Park, he needs to eliminate an obstacle. Hwang, who knows his true identity, seeing Moon-young standing before him safe and sound, Hwang is completely shocked. He can't believe Moon-young is still alive. To eliminate this obstacle, Moon-young decides to use a risky tactic. He intentionally tells Hwang that he has become the chef of Royal Park. Hearing this, Hwang senses danger from Moon-young. What are you planning to do? After knocking Hwang out, Moon-young intentionally threatens him before leaving. Unbeknownst to him, as soon as Moon-young leaves, Hwang, the idiot, staggers to Gil-do's office. But he doesn't know that he has fallen into a trap carefully prepared by Moon-young. Hwang frantically tells Gil-do that he has found Choi Seok. Hearing Hwang's words, Gil-do looks doubtful. Isn't he dead? What does the body show him? At this point, Hwang also reveals the truth about lying back then. Although Gil-do seems angry, those things are no longer important. Right now, what Gil-do wants is to find Choi Seok. Hwang says he can't answer right away, but he promises to take care of it for him. After hearing Hwang's words, Gil-do promises that, just to reveal who Choi Seok is, he will restore him to the position. Then, Gil-do finds Moon-young and grabs him. Just by buying a bowl of noodles, he has made billions of dollars. To get the special noodle secret, he even harmed his savior. But he never expected that a fire would not only kill both the benefactor, but also leave a seed of revenge. For the past dozen years, he had dreamed of finding this boy to eliminate the threat. And now he knew, from the subordinates under him, that the boy who managed to escape the clutches of hell had become a chef at his restaurant. Knowing this, Gil-do, with a malicious look in his eyes, finds Moon-young and grabs his arm, but discovers that his hand has no scars. Moon-young sighs in relief. It turns out that during his time in the hospital recovering from his injury, the scars on his body had been removed. Because he's chosen to walk into the enemy's lair to get revenge, he has to take every precaution to avoid revealing his identity. Although he didn't find any scars on Moon-young's body, Gil-do still doesn't believe Hwang could be lying. So, he gives a firm order, no matter what, they have to find Hwang. The next morning, wanting to earn enough money to escape, Hwang calls Gil-do's wife, Gang-suk, claiming to know the secret behind her parents' car accident, and uses it to demand a large sum of money. Learning that her own husband was the killer, the anger in Gang-suk's heart erupts. She hugs her father tightly, heartbroken to the core. Unbeknownst to her, Gil-do is watching this scene through a hidden camera he installed. This makes Gil-do suspicious. Even when her father became disabled, she didn't cry. It was only after receiving this phone call that she shed tears. Gil-do, with his sharp mind, suddenly connects it to Hwang. At this point, he realizes that the accident has been exposed, so he secretly has Gang-suk followed. And before the two can meet, he successfully kidnaps Hwang. Then, Gil-do confidently sits next to Gang-suk, lying that he wasn't responsible for her parents' accident, and warning that as long as Gang-suk doesn't interfere with his affairs, she can still live a normal life. But if she does, he won't forgive anyone. Although there's no concrete evidence, Gil-do's naked threat only strengthens Gang-suk's belief in her suspicions. Before taking Hwang to the northwest, Gil-do finally confirms Moon-young's identity one last time. Moon-young. Who is he? Is it Choi Seok, right? But he also knows the ending. If I say I'm right, will you let me live? Hearing this, Gil-do shakes his head. Knowing that there's no way to escape, Hwang doesn't directly answer his question. He just tells him that everything isn't over yet. Not getting the answer he wants, Gil-do angrily slams the car door. But Hwang's bizarre smile before he leaves surprises Gil-do. At this moment, a subordinate suddenly informs Gil-do that during the process of dealing with Hwang, they found 2 photos in his pocket. Seeing the photos, Gil-do immediately becomes unsettled. He discovers that Moon-young had a relationship with official Choi. This clue makes him even more suspicious of Moon-young. He even guesses that Moon-young might be the one who ruined the Name-kwan party. To clarify the relationship between Moon-young and official Choi, he specially invites official Choi to Name-kwan, and also invites Moon-young. The 2 men are smiling and chatting happily, when suddenly, a noodle seller from the kitchen comes in. causing the atmosphere in the room to freeze. A statement from official Choi once again dispels the suspicions in Gil-doo's heart. So the question is, if official Choi betrayed Moon-young last time, why would he help Moon-young this time? It turns out that after Moon-young recovered from his injuries, he had a chance to meet Mr. So, official Choi's superior, at a temple. Mr. So loves eating Moon-young's noodles. Therefore, under pressure from his superior, official Choi couldn't do anything else. On the other hand, Tai-ha looks at the business card that Gil-doo left behind and thinks for days and nights about the words Gil-doo said to him, deciding to go to Gil-doo to find answers. But Gil-doo doesn't reveal to Tai-ha, who is tasked with harming his father. Gil-doo says that this person is very powerful. Even if he did tell Tai-ha, Tai-ha couldn't do anything. Faced with Tai-ha's persistence, Gil-doo tells Tai-ha that if he acts now, he'll be tipping his hand and failing. The only way to act is to work under his command, accumulating his power along with Gil-doo's power. Only then will he have a chance. But Tai-ha doesn't accept Gil-doo's offer. However, as soon as he steps out the door, he suddenly encounters Moon-young. The two stare at each other incredulously for a long time. All his efforts have been for nothing. Then Moon-young suddenly becomes anxious. He doesn't understand why Tai-ha is here, and Tai-ha also feels suspicious about Moon-young's attitude. Therefore, he waits outside Nam Quan for hours until Moon-young comes out. Tai-ha wonders what Moon-young is doing at Nam Quan, but Moon-young warns him that this place is not safe. The two go to a bar. Tai-ha doesn't understand why Moon-young is at Nam Quan, but he's worried that Moon-young might be in danger there. So he advises Moon-young to leave Nam Quan. Faced with Tai-ha's misunderstanding, Moon-young reveals to Tai-ha that his parents were killed by Gil-doo, and declares that the enemy who killed his parents is right in front of him. He must get justice. His only goal in life is revenge. Hearing Moon-young's words, Tai-ha immediately falls silent. He doesn't know how to comfort Moon-young, nor does he know how to stop Moon-young. Moon-young hopes he won't see Tai-ha at Nam Quan again. Faced with Moon-young's relentless pursuit of revenge, Tai-ha has no choice but to worry. On the other hand, Gil-doo can't accept being just an ordinary person. So, he invites official Choi, wanting him to help him enter the political arena. But when official Choi says he's not capable, he recommends Mr. So. Gil-doo clearly understands. However, meeting with Mr. So is not easy. So he asks if official Choi can help. Official Choi again recommends Moon-young and tells him that the relationship between Moon-young and Mr. So is very deep and that he can help him with this. Hearing this, Gil-doo finds Moon-young and hopes Moon-young can help him introduce himself to Mr. So Moon-young also decisively agrees to Gil-doo's request, but he has a condition. He only wants to serve a bowl of noodles. This request is a bit excessive. Moon-young frankly says that he has completely revealed himself. His goal is to become the successor to the family business. He says that with just one chance from Gil-doo, he can do anything, and will be loyal to Gil-doo from now on. However, Moon-young's self-exposure only increases Gil-doo's suspicion. But Moon-young has long anticipated this, and has prepared a way to break down those walls. He says that he knows Gil-doo is suspicious of him, so he should just keep being suspicious. Only when suspicion ends can he be trusted. Although Gil-doo still has doubts about Moon-young's origins and identity, he pretends to agree to Moon-young's condition, so that he can enter the political arena smoothly. Meanwhile, Tai-ha is worried that Moon-young will be in danger, working alone at Nam Quan. After thinking for a long time, he decides to go to Gil-doo's side to protect Moon-young. However, Moon-young completely doesn't understand Tai-ha's intentions. On his first day working as Gil-doo's henchman, he fell into the hands of a group of thugs. After safely getting his boss to his destination, he confidently steps out. But 1 against 3 is a bit of a disadvantage. Seeing that Tai-ha is exhausted and unable to continue, Gil-doo steps out to stop the 3 thugs. It turns out that these 3 thugs were intentionally arranged by Gil-doo to test Tai-ha's loyalty and skill. Immediately afterwards, Gil-doo pulls out his handkerchief and hands it to Tai-ha. From then on, Tai-ha becomes Gil-doo's close confidant. Then, Moon-young comes to Tai-ha, looking angry, questioning Tai-ha as to why he is here. But Tai-ha declares it's because he has had a criminal record and has been looked down upon by others. His being here is purely for himself. He wants to be recognized by everyone as successful. Naturally, Moon-young doesn't believe Tai-ha's words, because he knows Tai-ha too well. They've grown up together since they were little, and he knows that Tai-ha wouldn't do these things for him. But Tai-ha says, "Do you know what I regret most in my life? Going to prison for Yo Kyung." Tai-ha says. Hearing Tai-ha's words, Moon-young's heart breaks. He slowly starts to let go. He can't believe that Tai-ha would say such things. Tai-ha in front of him even feels foreign. However, Tae-ha admits that he has changed, just like Moo Myung has changed. Tae-ha's words shatter Moo Myung's heart, but Moo Myung doesn't know that Tae-ha's original intention in coming here was to protect him, and that these words were intentionally said to push him away. Early the next morning, Moo Myung invites Representative So to the Happy Pleasure Palace. However, as soon as Gil-do sees Representative So for the first time, he recognizes this tall, imposing figure. The reason is that, over a decade ago, Gil-do pretended to be a tutor at Mr. So's house, stealing money and being discovered by the housekeeper, which led him to become a robber and murderer. Although Gil-do has gone through more than a decade and his appearance has changed a lot, Mr. Sabantum So recognizes him at first glance. He clenches his fist and smiles at Gil-do, while Gil-do, at this moment, although not showing any expression, is extremely tense inside. At this time, both don't dare to act lightly, trying to hide and pretend as a way of being cautious, like two monsters wary of each other. At this moment, Yeo-kyung suddenly appears at the Happy Pleasure Palace, because she's investigating the case of her parents' murder. Due to a coincidence, she has investigated Gil-do. At this time, Tae-ha is tasked with dealing with Yeo-kyung. When he meets Yeo-kyung, Tae-ha shows surprise. He quickly shakes his head, indicating to act as if they don't know each other. Yeo-kyung immediately understands Tae-ha's intention. She needs to ask him some questions about the case. Simple questions that don't require avoiding each other. Representative So is busy with work, and it's not convenient to bother him, so he can only be forced to leave. Afterwards, Tae-ha finds Yeo-kyung. Yeo-kyung can't believe that Tae-ha is working for Gil-do. Faced with Yeo-kyung's interrogation, Tae-ha says that he has a reason to enter the Happy Pleasure Palace, and that he can't leave now. He also warns Yeo-kyung not to come to the Happy Pleasure Palace to investigate again. He doesn't want Yeo-kyung to be in danger because of it. However, Yeo-kyung tries to persuade Tae-ha to leave the Happy Pleasure Palace. She also doesn't want Tae-ha to follow in Gil-do's footsteps and go down the path of crime. But Tae-ha has already made up his mind. He coldly says that he used to listen to her because of a debt. After speaking, Tae-ha wants to leave. Yeo-kyung says that if he goes like this, they will no longer be friends. Hearing Yeo-kyung's words, Tae-ha coldly says, "Friends are not worth caring about." After speaking, he coldly walks away from Yeo-kyung's car. Tae-ha's ruthlessness and coldness are like a sharp blade, stabbing into Yeo-kyung's heart. Meanwhile, Gil-do, after meeting Mr. So mentions that Moo Myung wants to become the owner of a restaurant. Gil-do doesn't trust Moo Myung and tries to use a competition to test him. Mr. So trusts Moo Myung's ability, but worries that Gil-do will use tricks. Therefore, he decides to participate in a competition, along with Gil-do. Mr. So's strong encouragement also allows Gil-do to see Moo Myung's greed, and he warns Moo Myung, "If you dare stand in front of me, I will crush you." Moo Myung says that he will never confront Gil-do. Hearing Moo Myung's words, Gil-do is very satisfied. However, what Gil-do didn't expect was that when he ordered his father-in-law to be drugged, he suddenly opened his eyes. An idiot was giving him the medicine. In the next instant, this immobile man, after decades, suddenly wakes up. Terrified, the man immediately runs out. When Gil-do hears this, he rushes to the old man's room in a panic. Meanwhile, Gil-do's wife, Gang-suk, wants to investigate Gil-do, so she secretly sneaks into Gil-do's office. Seeing this, Tae-ha tries to stop her. Gang-suk uses the excuse of looking for her things to approach Gil-do's desk. However, when Gil-do arrives at the old man's room, the old man has his eyes closed tightly. Worried, Gil-do gently pats the old man's hand to test him, but the old man shows no sign of waking up. Gil-do mutters, "Don't you want me to live a good life?" While Gil-do is losing his composure, Gang-suk discovers a remote control on the desk. Unexpectedly, the painting on the wall begins to move. The screen that the control opened revealed a surprise to Gang-suk. Behind the painting is surveillance footage from every corner of the Happy Pleasure Palace, with no dead ends. Even Gil-do secretly installed cameras in his parents' room. The scene of Gil-do grabbing his father-in-law's neck that Gang-suk sees on the screen immediately makes her realize something is wrong. So, she rushes to her father's room. Gang-suk sees bruises on her father's hands and angrily grabs his neck. "Did you do it?" Despite him denying it, she can't lie to herself anymore. Gang-suk curses him, asking if he is even human. How could he do this? Seeing the direct evidence, Gil-do immediately understands what has happened. He runs back to the office and hits Tae-ha. But as Gil-do is scolding Tae-ha, Gang-suk suddenly enters, with 2 police officers behind her. Initially, she wanted to use Gil-do's secretly installed cameras to put Gil-do in jail. Under Korean law, secretly installing cameras without permission can result held criminal liability for violating the basic rights of others. But when Gang Suk opens the painting, she can't help but be surprised to see the images from the camera turn into food videos. Although she is angry, there's nothing she can do. Taeha used to work in prison and has a degree in information and communication technology, so these kinds of small tricks can't be difficult for him. From then on, Gil-do completely trusts Taeha and promotes him to head of the department. A few days later, the final competition is about to take place. However, unfortunately, Moo-myung meets Gil-yong at the Happy Pleasure Palace. Gil-yong always delivers food to the Happy Pleasure Palace to make a living. Likewise, Moo-myung also tells Gil-yong that they have to pretend not to know each other when they are here. So, the 4 friends from the orphanage have all been involved with the Happy Pleasure Palace, but have to pretend that they don't know each other. Gil-yong doesn't understand why, and also doesn't like this way of contacting them. However, for each other's safety, they have no other choice. The competition starts as expected, and for fairness, the competition uses an anonymous evaluation format. There's an intention behind the words. The judges only evaluate the noodles, but they don't know who the owner is. After tasting and evaluating, Moo-myung's noodles are clearly worse. The reason is that as Moo-myung made the noodles, his old injury suddenly recurred, causing the noodles to be cooked for too long. Meanwhile, Gil-do intentionally cheats, causing Baek's assistant to put in some unauthorized ingredients. As they are about to announce the results, a woman takes the initiative to raise a question. Seeing this, Gil-do tries to stop her, but support from Gang Suk prevents him from speaking. The person reporting on the ingredients states that they are completely incompatible with the components in the noodles. Gil-do tries to defend Baek, but he doesn't expect Baek to be an honest person. Baek's words unintentionally reveal their deep relationship. Baek's statement makes it clear to everyone that Gil-do manipulated everything. Gil-do, although angry, can't say anything in the face of clear evidence. Finally, he's forced to announce Moo-myung as the head chef for the noodles, even though he doesn't want to. Afterwards, Gil-do angrily revokes Baek's degree. Although his deception plan failed, he no longer has time to care. He still has a big worry, which is the old man, and he secretly goes to the old man's room. He takes out a small vial, which is filled with poison. At this moment, the old man suddenly wakes up, but the old man's advice can't stop Gil-do. The old man desperately closes his eyes, a tear of regret falling from his eye socket, because he had once done something that he regretted with Gil-do. Meanwhile, during the investigation into Gil-do, Yo-kyung stumbles upon a photo of Gil-do from over a decade ago. He was the richest noodle king in Korea, making a living from theft. Over a decade ago, he harmed his own savior, thereby obtaining a secret book about amazing noodles. Over a decade later, based on that amazing noodle book, he deceived the old man out of a great secret. However, the more he receives, the greater the desire for money and profit. To inherit the old man's property early, he even plotted to harm the old man, who had raised him for half of his life. But what he didn't expect was that the old man, who had been immobile for nearly 10 years, would suddenly wake up. Hearing the old man's words, Gil-do's hand twitches slightly. He says to the old man that the people who opened noodle shops at the market and founded Namquan were all me. The person making the special chicken noodles in the palace is also me. Seeing everyone working hard is also me, he believes that owning Namquan is a given, something he should have. Gil-do, you are a murderer. Hearing the word murderer, Gil-do can't hold back his smile. He gently lowers himself close to the old man and says, "Am I the only murderer?" Initially, after becoming the old man's son-in-law, Gil-do also had a wife. However, the woman that Gil-do deeply loved was actually a victim of the old man. Hearing the accusations from Gil-do, the old man remembers the past. Does he still remember the woman who gave him the warrant for Gil-do? That woman was Gil-do's lover. However, the reason the woman gave him the picture was to get the old man to agree to let Gil-do and his daughter divorce. But the old man not only refused to let go of Gil-do, but also wanted to investigate Gil-do, to put him in jail. Not getting agreement from the old man, the woman grabbed the old man, trying to get the warrant back. However, the old man angrily pushed the woman to the floor, and in that moment, the woman's head hit the cabinet. Seeing the woman lying in a pool of blood, the old man was surprised and terrified, and quickly ran away from the house. However, what the old man didn't expect was that Gil-do and this woman had a daughter named Da-hae. After learning about Da-hae's past, the old man is suddenly excited. She doesn't dare to believe it, and doesn't want to believe that this is true, because Da-hae is the person the old man has raised since she was little. The relationship between the grandfather and the granddaughter is very close. Seeing the old man being so surprised, Gil-do also changes his plan. He abandons taking the old man to the afterlife. and instead, he tries to persuade the old man to transfer his shares to him. After saying that, Gil-do leaves the old man's room. Not long after, when she hears that the old man is awake, Da-hye hurries to visit him. But the person who gave Da-hye this news is none other than Gil-do. When she meets Da-hye, the old man doesn't reveal the truth. Instead, he expresses great regret to Da-hye. Seeing the old man's accusatory face and hearing his apologies, Da-hye is momentarily confused and doesn't understand what has happened. On the other hand, after receiving the wanted image of Gil-do from many years ago, and also learning that the victim of the case was also Mr. So's housekeeper, the next morning, after investigating the information in hand, Yo-kyung also concludes Jung-tae, the head of Nam-kwan, and the killer from back then, Gil-do, are the same person. At the same time, Mi-ja also reveals Da-hye's past to Moon-young. Initially, Mi-ja had known about Da-hye's past very early on. Therefore, she used the DNA samples of Gil-do and Da-hye to perform a DNA test. This was also one of the reasons Mi-ja approached Da-hye. After learning about Da-hye's past, Moon-young also starts to approach her, even specially cooking noodles for her. In their conversation, Moon-young intentionally gets Da-hye drunk and gathers some important information. There is a button, and simply pressing it against the wall will cause it to rotate. But the problem is, how does Da-hye know about the secret room in Gil-do's office? It turns out that the relationship between Da-hye and Gil-do wasn't close to begin with. She even suspected that her mother had been harmed by Gil-do. Therefore, when she was accidentally investigating Gil-do, she inadvertently broke into his secret room. After learning this, Moon-young starts to think about attacking the secret room. The next morning, the old man writes a will. Gang-suk is eager to ask about the contents of the will, but is told that nothing will be revealed until after the old man passes away. However, when the lawyer leaves, he is accidentally caught by Gil-do, who knows that the lawyer came because of the will. With the deficiency deep in his heart, Gil-do begins to have thoughts of harming the old man. He takes out the bracelet that his wife used to wear. Gil-do, a smart man, has guessed that the old man isn't transferring ownership of the shares to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be hiding the will from him. When Gil-do takes out the bracelet, the old man begins to get agitated. Immediately after, Gil-do puts the bracelet on the old man's wrist and informs him that Da-hye will be visiting him soon. When the old man knows that the truth about how he harmed Da-hye's mother is about to be exposed, he is extremely afraid. Meanwhile, Moon-young also starts to investigate the secret room. He secretly sneaks into Gil-do's office. However, when he presses the button under the table, the alarm system is unexpectedly triggered. Never secretly break into this man's office, because you never know what's in there. Moon-young thought he had found the secret button to open the safe, but unfortunately, he activated the alarm system. Realizing the dangerous situation, Moon-young begins to panic, trying to escape, but discovers that the door has been locked. As soon as Gil-do receives the warning, he immediately calls his henchman and rushes to the office. To save Moon-young, Tae-ha doesn't hesitate to use his body to ram into the door. On the other side, Da-hye also comes to the old man's side. Da-hye sees the bracelet on the old man's wrist. She can't believe it and asks him, "Why is this bracelet here? Are you the one who killed my mother?" Under Da-hye's questioning, the old man suddenly becomes emotional. In the moment that he closes his eyes, Da-hye can't help but feel extremely pained. At this time, Gil-do also arrives at the office with a team of people. In the emergency situation, Tae-ha uses all of his strength to push the door open. As soon as the door opens, Gil-do rushes in. Moon-young uses the opportunity to hide behind the door. "Was it you who broke this door? It's impossible to just press the mechanism to ring the bell." The bell rang, and the door was locked at the same time. There must be an intruder inside. As the henchmen prepare to go inside and check, Gang-suk unexpectedly arrives and informs Gil-do that her father has passed away. Hearing this news, Gil-do quickly goes to the old man's room. Because of this, Moon-young escapes danger. Da-hye grabs the prayer beads in her hand and slowly approaches Gil-do. She understands the truth of everything. "Thank you for telling me the truth now. The person I loved the most was actually the one who killed my mother." Lying alone in the corner, Da-hye curls up, her heart aching, difficult to soothe. After the incident, Gil-do questions Tae-ha, asking who broke into the office. But Tae-ha has no answer. At this time, Gil-do suddenly guesses that perhaps Da-hye was the one who broke into the office. After thinking for a moment, Tae-ha tells a lie. Gil-do can't imagine that he, who has been smart his whole life, would make such a silly mistake. Finally, Tae-ha successfully fools Gil-do. However, after the funeral ends, the three major shareholders develop intentions regarding the will, but unexpectedly, the lawyer states that the current conditions are not sufficient, and it cannot be revealed. After inquiring, they learn that Da-hye needs to be present. Initially, the old man will transfer 20% of his shares to Da-hye. While Da-hye is shocked, Gang Suk starts to suspect that Gil-do and Da-hye have conspired to compete for the shares. However, Da-hye doesn't care about the shares, which is why she leaves the meeting room. Seeing Da-hye leave with the shares, Gang Suk begins to lose control. Not long after, it's the anniversary of Gil-do's lost wife's death. To get the shares from Da-hye, he puts on a tragic scene in front of his wife's grave. Da-hye still knows that, before the corpse of the person who killed her mother, a daughter cannot bear it. Leaving her is even more difficult. I don't know what to do. Tell me. After visiting his mother, Gil-do's tragic confessions keep echoing in Da-hye's mind. Under the urging of family affection, she finally transfers the shares to Gil-do. Not long after, Moo Myung has the opportunity to appear on the same show as Gil-do. However, on the show, to embarrass Gil-do, Moo Myung proposes a competition to make a Chinese noodle dish, longevity noodles. The meaning of this noodle is length. Whoever can make the longest noodle will win. Of course, Gil-do doesn't have the confidence, because he has never learned to make Chinese noodles, while Moo Myung has done the opposite. Initially, to get revenge, he went to China, Shaanxi province, to learn to make noodles. Faced with Moo Myung's challenge in front of the public media, Gil-do has no choice but to agree to participate in the competition. Unexpectedly, Moo Myung is very proficient at making longevity noodles, constantly making them for a long time without making mistakes. Meanwhile, Gil-do makes mistakes repeatedly and becomes so nervous that he starts to sweat. He is the most famous noodle king in Korea, proficient in all noodle making techniques. But he doesn't know how to make Chinese longevity noodles. Faced with great public embarrassment, Gil-do is covered in sweat and becomes extremely awkward. However, what Gil-do didn't expect was that, to get revenge, Moo Myung had long learned the secret to making longevity noodles in Shaanxi province, China. Sitting in front of the TV, seeing Gil-do making mistakes in front of everyone, both Madam Fan and Gang Suk were laughing, because this step by Moo Myung will cause Gil-do's reputation to decline sharply, while the sales of Nam Quan under Moo Myung's leadership are also skyrocketing. This means that Gil-do will have to leave that position sooner or later. However, Gil-do is such a smart person. How could he allow this to happen? Gil-do intentionally opens a new store in the suburbs, and he assigns Moo Myung to be personally responsible. Of course, Moo Myung understands Gil-do's intention. This is clearly to push him out of Nam Quan. Faced with Moo Myung's reluctance, Gil-do proposes an attractive reward and promises to share half of the business profits. Although the conditions that Gil-do proposes are very attractive, Moo Myung remains steadfast in wanting to be the manager of Nam Quan. After hearing Gil-do's words, Moo Myung suddenly freezes in place. Gil-do tells Moo Myung that only by resigning from the position of department head can he gain his trust. Only then will he consider making him his successor. Soon after, Gil-do opens a small shareholders meeting to discuss Moo Myung's resignation. Mi-ja and Gang Suk immediately object to Gil-do's decision, and point out that with the shares in Gil-do's hands, he doesn't have the right to fire the department head. Unexpectedly, Gil-do brings out a portion of the shares that he received from Yang Hai to transfer to Moo Myung. With this, Gil-do owns 50% of the shares. Similarly, with the shares in Gang Suk's and Mi-ja's hands, plus the shares in the hands of family members, they also own 50%. However, when both sides are at a stalemate, Moo Myung voluntarily proposes to resign. This action by Moo Myung makes Mi-ja very angry, but he assures her that he will bring Nam Quan to her. However, Mi-ja cannot accept his actions. This slap also signifies that the relationship between the two has completely ended. Watching Mi-ja leave in anger, Moo Myung, although feeling regret, can't do anything else, because he has to do this to completely gain Gil-do's trust, and only in this way can he completely defeat Gil-do. After the incident, Representative So comes to meet Gil-do to discuss Moo Myung's dismissal, and asks if Gil-do wants to enter the political arena. Gil-do clearly understands that Representative So has no intention of leading him, because he chose to dismiss Moo Myung. If that's the case, he doesn't need to pretend in front of him. The more the two talk, the more hostile they become. This conversation leads both of them directly into a confrontation. Realizing that Gil-do doesn't take him seriously, Representative So grabs a bottle of alcohol on the table, puts it in front of Gil-do, and says, "Pour me a glass, you bastard." He's a monster who brutally harmed a woman with an ashtray, and now he wants to pretend that he's a human? This man relies on arson, murder, and robbery to build a business empire, fearing neither heaven nor earth, but he's only afraid of the man before him. A look from that man made Gil-do feel pressured. Instead of saying it's fear and panic, It's more like a clear sense of pressure. Over a decade ago, Gil-do accidentally killed Representative So's housekeeper. Now, with both having a clear understanding of each other's identity, Gil-do also realizes that Representative So must have his own purpose. He wants to force Gil-do to hand over those two things, but that's no different from wanting to kill Gil-do. He's too greedy, using a dark memory as a secret to threaten him to sacrifice something that he had to trade his whole life to get. Does he think he will agree? Hearing Gil-do's words, Representative So sneers and says, "Give it to him and then steal it back as usual." Isn't that Gil-do's specialty? Being mocked by Representative. So Gil-do suddenly becomes agitated. In anger, he refuses Representative So, saying that he thinks he can defeat me this way? It's not certain that I will fail. A mouse pushed into a corner will also bite a cat. But Representative So isn't a gentle cat either. He arrogantly claims that maybe a mouse dares to bite a cat, but after biting, it definitely won't survive. Being threatened by Representative So, the fear in Gil-do's heart immediately doubles. After returning home, Gil-do loosens his tie and sits on the sofa wearily. With 12 years of wandering in the business world, he has never feared someone like this. However, what Gil-do didn't expect was that, at this critical time, his wife, Gang-suk, had also reached out to Representative So, wanting to overthrow him, and had given him a file of documents. Afterwards, Representative So transfers this document to Yeo-kyung. It turns out that this document records Gil-do's money laundering crimes. With this evidence, Yeo-kyung could destroy Gil-do's financial empire in just one night. However, unexpectedly, she's stopped by Representative So. After investigating, collecting just one document is enough. Representative So is also originally using Yeo-kyung. He wants to overthrow Gil-do to seize the group, and also obtain evidence of money laundering by most of the officials. With these secrets, Representative So will be like a fish in water in the political world. After learning Representative So's intention, Yeo-kyung refuses his order. However, unexpectedly, Representative So tells Yeo-kyung that if she can hand over the documents of Nam-kwan, he will reveal to Yeo-kyung who ordered the murder of her parents. Although Yeo-kyung really wants to know the cause of her parents' deaths, for the sake of reason and fairness, she ultimately refuses Representative So's offer. Unexpectedly, after being rejected, Representative So angrily calls Yeo-kyung's superior and orders Yeo-kyung's superior to personally command the investigation. With evidence to punish Gil-do, Yeo-kyung immediately informs Moon-young of this good news, and wants to use this opportunity to search for Gil-do's secret room. However, Moon-young completely doesn't know how to enter the secret room. But Yeo-kyung doesn't give up. She finds Tae-ha to ask about the location of the room. Although Tae-ha also doesn't know about the mechanism of the secret room, he provides Yeo-kyung with a useful clue. Whenever Gil-do goes out, he always carries a steel pen, even if there aren't any documents that need to be signed that day. Tae-ha also realizes that if the steel pen is missing, Gil-do will become uneasy. After learning this, Yeo-kyung begins to suspect the steel pen on Gil-do's body. Early the next morning, Yeo-kyung is informed by her superior that her command of the investigation has been revoked. Although Yeo-kyung tries to object, under pressure from her superior, she has no other choice. People from the prosecutor's office unexpectedly show up at Gil-do's office, which doesn't surprise him. Instead, Gil-do appears comfortable. Faced with the investigation order, he calmly accepts the inspection. At this time, Gang-suk also confidently waits to see Gil-do's cheap tricks. But Yeo-kyung doesn't know that this time, she's once again doing something meaningless. After the prosecutor's office conducts an investigation, they don't find any evidence. However, just as everyone wants to leave, Yeo-kyung intentionally has Gil-do sign the investigation document. As Gil-do uses the steel pen to sign the document, Yeo-kyung intentionally finds a reason to inspect Gil-do's steel pen. Although Gil-do doesn't agree, to eliminate suspicion, he still hands the pen to Yeo-kyung. However, as Yeo-kyung opens the pen, Gil-do suddenly panics. "What are you doing?" "Oh, in other people's eyes, this is just an ordinary steel pen. But in your eyes, it's a key that can open the door to the secret room." Gil-do can't believe that Yeo-kyung has discovered the secret in the pen. However, when Yeo-kyung and the staff from the prosecutor's office enter the secret room, they only see an empty room. Other than some basic furniture, there aren't any valuable traces. The reason is that Gil-do had discovered that someone had broken into the room looking for the secret room. Early in the morning, Dagu had arranged everything. Taking advantage of the old man's funeral, he had transferred all the cash and evidence from the secret room. With no other choice, Yeo-kyung can only return empty-handed. So, how did he find out about the unexpected inspection? The reason is that Moon-young had secretly leaked the news. Yeo-kyung angrily seeks out Moon-young. Unable to control her emotions, she repeatedly questions whether he leaked this information to Gil-do. Faced with Yo Kyung's accusations and questioning, Moo Myung believes that Gil-do cannot be defeated yet. At this time, Moo Myung has been blinded by hatred. He only has one thought in mind: revenge. He doesn't allow Gil-do to easily go to jail. Instead, he wants to personally take back everything from Gil-do and then send him to the gates of hell. Hearing Moo Myung's answer, Yo Kyung feels extremely disappointed. She doesn't expect that all her efforts, and those of Tae-ha and Gil-yong, would be repaid with such a cost. Faced with Yo Kyung's criticism, Moo Myung, although unwilling, can't say anything more. On the other hand, Representative So is also angry that this inspection failed. He orders Yo Kyung's superior to capture the group's manager, Do-gu. Only then can they capture this big fish, Gil-do. To avoid affecting his plan, Representative So angrily suspends Yo Kyung from her job. Although Moo Myung had leaked information to Gil-do, hoping to be trusted by him and return to work at Nam Kwan, he realizes that all of that was just his own illusion. Gil-do still doesn't trust Moo Myung and has no intention of bringing Moo Myung back to Nam Kwan. Meanwhile, Yo Kyung returns to the prosecutor's office. Looking at the wanted poster of Gil-do from back then, she feels very unwilling. She takes the wanted poster and goes to Nam Kwan, placing it in front of Gil-do. However, Gil-do appears very calm and says that he doesn't recognize the image. He then meticulously recounts how Yo Kyung's parents were harmed. What shocks Yo Kyung is that Gil-do describes the scene of the night her parents were killed in such detail, as if Gil-do had been present at the scene. Next, Gil-do mentions the relationship between him and Representative So and uses the opportunity to undermine the trust between Yo Kyung and Representative So, saying that Representative So was using Yo Kyung to arrest him. Hearing Gil-do's words, Yo Kyung's emotions suddenly become agitated. She quickly asks an urgent question about who the culprit is. Although Gil-do doesn't directly say the name of the culprit, from his words, he implies that the perpetrator is Representative So. Hearing Gil-do's words, the anger within Yo Kyung erupts to the extreme. After leaving Gil-do's room, Yo Kyung becomes dazed, like a soul lost in Nam Kwan. Meanwhile, Tae-ha has been unable to restrain the anger in his heart. He wants to find Representative So to take revenge, but is stopped by Gil-do. Gil-do kindly reminds him, saying that he's the person he fears the most. Now, if Tae-ha goes, he won't be able to return. Gil-do's words of concern move Tae-ha to tears. Tae-ha is desperate. Although Gil-do gently pats Tae-ha's shoulder, offering comfort, a sinister and smug smile appears on his face. Meanwhile, Moo Myung has come up with a way to return to Nam Kwan, which is to use Nam Kwan's signature fried chicken noodles to attract customers. Clearly, Moo Myung's method has quickly caught the attention of the elders in Nam Kwan. To avoid having the secrets of this dish revealed, the elders in Nam Kwan order Gil-do to sign a succession contract with Moo Myung as soon as possible. Otherwise, he will be replaced from the position of leader. Powerless in the face of this, Gil-do can only agree. However, Moo Myung's signature fried chicken noodles make Gil-do suspicious. He even guesses that Moo Myung is actually a student of Choi Seok from back then. Therefore, he asks Moo Myung why he makes this dish. Moo Myung affirms that he has an absolute palate. Any dish that he has tried, he can make. Hearing Moo Myung's words, Gil-do quickly makes a request. He says he will make cold noodles with pear juice. If he succeeds, he will appoint him as his successor. Faced with a challenge from Gil-do, Moo Myung resolutely agrees to his challenge. On the other side, to investigate the cause of her parents' deaths, Yo Kyung specially seeks out Representative So and expresses sincere apologies. To get her old job back, Yo Kyung declares that she will personally capture Gil-do, thereby showing loyalty to Representative So. Representative So feels that Yo Kyung still has value, so he agrees to her request. Meanwhile, at this time, Moo Myung also faces a high-stakes confrontation with Gil-do. Gil-do talks about how he harmed Moo Myung's parents. Throughout the process, he acts as a storyteller, clearly wanting to probe Moo Myung. On this side, Yo Kyung's reckless actions are enough to show that she is not safe right now. A plan is put into motion. Yo Kyung is stopped by a group of people. She is attacked, and they prepare to take her away. Fortunately, at this time, Tae-ha manages to arrive and rescue her. He rushes in and fights with the thugs. However, before long, he is severely injured. Just when it seems certain that he will fall, Do-gu appears just in time, and with his agile skills, he successfully rescues Tae-ha. Tae-ha immediately takes Yo Kyung to the hospital. On the other side, Gil-do accidentally picks up Tae-ha's wallet in the office. While picking it up to look at it, he inadvertently discovers the photo of the 4 children at the orphanage from that year. The time on the photo makes him realize that everything is probably a conspiracy. Moo Myung seeks out Gil-do and demands that he move out of the office within 3 days. In addition, he also warns Gil-do not to enter the kitchen. Moo Myung's intentions make Gil-do's suspicions even clearer. He places the photo from Taeha's wallet on the table. When he sees the photo, Moo Myung realizes that his identity has been exposed. Meanwhile, Gil-do also guesses that Moo Myung is the person in the shadows, who has been manipulating everything. However, at this time, Moo Myung no longer cares, because he has completed most of his plan. 3 days later, Gil-do realizes that all of his belongings have been moved out of the office. Afterwards, Gil-do, unwilling, goes to meet Representative So. Now, Gil-do's only chance is to enter the political arena, to regain everything that he has lost. However, the result he receives is failure in the very first election. Perhaps this fall makes him understand that his tribulation has arrived. The monster within him has awakened. That night, he wants to drive alone to Representative So's house. Taeha senses that something is wrong and wants to stop him, but is slapped in the face. At Representative So's house, official Choi is constantly chattering, saying nonsensical things. He expresses that what Gil-do needs now is a vacant position. But Gil-do maintains his silence. He suddenly stands up and slowly walks towards official Choi and Representative So. Gil-do's expression can't help but frighten the two. The scene from that year, also in this house, appears. Then too, he picked up an ashtray, as he is now. With a vacant look, counting from 1 to 3, he slowly approaches them. Representative So wants to stop him, but he himself is also afraid. The ashtray strikes a powerful blow. Official Choi goes to be with his ancestors, a scene just like that year. Representative So can't help but panic. But Gil-do says, "We have a vacant position now. Can I fill that spot?" Faced with Gil-do's cruel action, Representative So is speechless and has no choice but to agree to Gil-do. However, what Gil-do doesn't expect is that Hwang wasn't eliminated by him as originally planned. Originally, Dagu had kidnapped Hwang, but he didn't take action as planned, sparing Hwang's life. That's why Hwang is here today. Hwang promises to testify in court to expose Gil-do's crimes. However, the condition is that he won't be prosecuted by the trial, and he wants to receive help from Yo-kyung. Not long after, the media began to broadcast the news of official Choi's death. Hearing this news, Yo-kyung is shocked. However, what makes Yo-kyung feel even more unbelievable is that the news claims that official Choi committed suicide. There's no doubt that all of this was arranged by Representative So. But this action by Representative So creates an opportunity for Gil-do. Now, Gil-do and Representative So are in the same boat. Therefore, Gil-do uses this to threaten Representative So, demanding that he return all the money he took from Gil-do. Representative So has no choice but to accept this. But he can't accept losing face like this. Therefore, he has people investigate Gil-do. Inadvertently, during this process, he discovers the father-daughter relationship between Gil-do and Da-hae. In such a time, Taeha inadvertently discovers the secret document that Da-hae gave to Moo Myung for safekeeping. To protect Da-hae and Moo Myung, Taeha takes the document and brings it to Representative So. He uses this document to threaten Representative So, forcing him to cooperate with Yo-kyung in investigating Gil-do's case. But Taeha's actions attract danger to himself. Under Representative So's help, Yo-kyung soon obtains an arrest warrant. Afterwards, they conduct a manhunt. Meanwhile, Gil-do and Moo Myung are both participating in a live broadcast on air. In reality, this live broadcast is a deliberate arrangement by Moo Myung, the purpose of which is to expose the crimes of Gil-do, who ended his parents' lives in the past. When his crimes are revealed in front of the entire media, Gil-do is powerless and doesn't know what to do. He wanders like a disembodied spirit towards the exit, hoping to leave the room that's making him feel suffocated. At this time, Yo-kyung also arrives at the location and gives the order to arrest him. She is successful in arresting Gil-do. However, on the way to detention, Gil-do uses the opportunity to seize the steering wheel, driving the car and causing an accident on the road. He successfully escapes. Meanwhile, Representative So has kidnapped Da-hae to get the secret document, and sends images of Da-hae's kidnapping to Taeha, demanding that Taeha hand over the secret document in exchange for Da-hae. Upon receiving the news, Taeha quickly rushes to rescue Da-hae. At the same time, Gil-do also receives the images. He begs Representative So to spare Da-hae, but is only answered that he must use his life to exchange for Da-hae's life. Representative So is delighted with his one stone two birds plan, unaware that his actions are actually digging his own grave. Taeha arrives at the scene first. After ensuring Dahe's safety, Taeha hands over the document to Representative. But because of this, Taeha closes his eyes forever, never to return. Representative So's actions completely enrage Gil-do. Gil-do secretly sneaks into Yo-kyung's car and tells her that the person who killed Taeha was Representative So. To avenge Taeha, the two of them cooperate. After successfully setting up a meeting with Representative So, Yo-kyung resolves all of Representative So's henchmen, with Dagu's help. Afterwards, they hand Representative So over to Gil-do. After a few gunshots, Representative So goes to the afterlife. Afterwards, Gil-do brings a gun to find Moon-myung. Gil-do says that he has only felt guilty once in his life, and that was when he pushed Moon-myung's father off the cliff. After expressing his regret in front of Moon-myung, Gil-do returns the secret that he stole to Moon-myung, and then shoots himself with the last bullet. Having completed his revenge plan, Moon-myung leaves Namkwon and gives the noodle recipe to Dahe. From then on, Dahe becomes the head chef of Namkwon. Moon-myung returns to his noodle shop and begins a happy life with Yo-kyung. And that is the end.